Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Courtney. I am a illustrator slash artist person generally. And today I have for you a photo study, a digital one specifically. If you are a returning cryptozoologist, in my last video, I was answering questions while I was painting Orville Peck, and today I'm going to be answering questions while I'm painting Barry Berkman, portrayed by Bill Hader on the show Barry. I've been in Bill Hader world recently. I've just been watching a lot of SNL, and I finally watched It Chapter 2 because he was in it. A lot of late talk show interviews. It's serious. It's been fun, but I've been in there post Barry, and so I've been trying to learn how to draw him. And the night that I recorded this, I was like, I don't feel like trying as hard per se to come up with something from imagination, so I'm just gonna find a picture of Barry and I'm gonna draw him. And it ended up being like a photo study or like a color study as much as it was trying to get his likeness down. There's room for improvement on both fronts, I think. I don't think I nailed it, but it's a work in progress. I've been trying to include more real-time footage lately, mainly because I have an iPad that can handle long videos now, which is awesome, but I do also think it's helpful if you are an artist to see someone working in real time versus just a speed paint, especially like the speed paints that Procreate and Clip Studio save, where they're not actually time accurate. They only record the strokes that you do. But I don't know if this is going to be real time. It depends on how long this voiceover ends up being. Right now, as I'm seeing it, it is 1.5 speed. It might end up being slower. It might actually be closer to real time. I'll throw it up on the screen, whatever percentage of sped up it is. But yeah, so I started this with a very loose and not great base sketch, just to have something. It depends on the day. There are some painting moments where I'm able to just start with blocks of color and then refine it, but usually I find I need some sort of line base to put my colors on top of, even if it's not very accurate or doesn't end up being super helpful in the end, because you'll see I end up just kind of covering everything I draw here, but it's kind of just to get like my hand loosened up and used to drawing the thing that I'm looking at. And I'm just doing it in black. I don't because of the color palette of this piece, I wasn't worried about trying to do a colored sketch or anything. I did add a little bit of shading just to kind of start getting the idea of some of the forms happening on Mr. Bill Hader's face. Let's get into some questions. You seem like a really cool person. This isn't a question. How are you? I'm good. I've been good recently. Right now, as I'm recording this video, I have things to look forward to. I'm going to New York City for a couple days to see Orville Peck, which I'm excited about. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to see my friend Eric. It's going to be great. And then after that, it's my birthday. And then after that, I'm visiting my friend Jay, whose family rents out like a little lake house in New Hampshire every summer, and for like a week. They're not like super rich. I wanted to emphasize that. It's like a fun little thing they do. And last year, me and a couple other friends visited, and it was really great. And so we're going back again, and I'm so excited. It's such a beautiful little area. Obviously, I'm not gonna say what area of New Hampshire it is, just because that's personal. But yeah, very excited. Hope the weather's good because it was gorgeous last year. But yeah, I'm good. Trying to go to the doctor again and like take care of myself in that way. Yeah, trying my darndest. And then I got 3 questions that were kind of hitting on the same thing. What are your art inspirations? What's your inspiration? I love your art. Thank you. And what art has made the biggest impacts on your art? Paintings, film, TV, music, etc. So I get inspiration from everywhere. I find it hard to like specify and like pinpoint like one thing that inspires me. I find that there's kind of 2 different types of inspiration for me. There's the more literal ones, so things I'm actually looking at and seeing and researching. And then there are also inspirations that are maybe more subconscious, but are still substantial enough in my life that I think they influence the art I'm making, even if it's not actually visible in the final outcome. So, right now, I've definitely been leaning into like film and television as my inspirations. I've kind of been realizing that maybe I should have gone to film school. I don't know. That's still kind of a big question for me. I'm not exactly sure where that's going to end up. But I've just been like really thinking about film recently and like making film and like what that would look like. Just because, like, I don't know if I can be an illustrator forever, like, just because the market and, like, I don't know. I've just been generally thinking, and so film has definitely been an inspiration. Specific films that have been really impactful for me, anything Jordan Peele has done, so, Nope and Get Out and Us, all amazing films. He's such a great director. And then David Lynch, big inspiration for me. Mulholland Drive and Fire Walk with Me, big inspirations. Fire Walk with Me especially really rewired my brain chemistry. Twin Peaks in general also kind of just like influenced me in that way, but specifically the movie I think was kind of the turning point for me. I recently watched The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, and that was awesome. That was so crazy. Also, Across the Spider-Verse, gorgeous, gorgeous film, like so beautiful. I loved it. Just really an accomplishment. And Into the Spider-Verse is also great. And then there are also some there's a lot of great foreign horror. So specifically House comes to mind. Noroi, The Curse, and Audition. I watched Audition recently, and that one was pretty crazy. Yeah, those are some of them. If you go on my Letterboxd, it's also cryptozoology. You can see the films that I am kind of actively looking at and watching. And then, paintings, the work of Goya has always been a big inspiration for me. Like, Saturn Devouring His Son might be my favorite painting of all time if I had to pick one. It is just so grotesque and awesome and amazing. I also love John Singer Sargent's work. I think his craftsmanship's beautiful. Love a good Cezanne. I love the way that he paints. Vincent van Gogh, of course, obviously. I mean, I think if someone didn't like Van Gogh's work, I'd be like, what's wrong with you? And then TV. I'll talk about TV later. There's a lot of TV questions. And then music, definitely. I mean, I've been talking about Orville Peck this whole video. But, he's definitely a big inspiration for me right now. Historically, My Chemical Romance has been a big inspiration. Paramore has been a big inspiration. 21 Pilots was a big inspiration for a long time, and I feel deceitful not mentioning that. It was a part of my life for a long time. And then general inspirations, very into electronics. If you go on my Tumblr, I have a whole tech tag where I just reblog interesting technological items. I'm really interested in the intersections of like technology and nature and like religion and alchemy and like the supernatural, like anything kind of in that ballpark I'm always into. Yeah, I get inspiration everywhere, kind of. I find it hard to pick like just a couple. Yeah, I can make like a whole other video just going through stuff that I love and why I love it and how it's inspired me. Maybe I will at some point, I'm not sure, but those are a couple. There's a couple to, feed on. Going back to the painting now, after I did that sort of base sketch layer, I went on top with just some like eyeballed colors. I think I started trying to just like totally eyeball it and go right into that bright red, and then I was like, no, that isn't right. And so I kind of dulled everything down with like a muddy-ish purple and a little bit more blue on the left side and a little more like warm on the right side. And now I'm going in on top and I'm actually building up some of the forms. So for this one, I'm actually color picking from the photo that you can see on the right there. Sometimes I color pick when I'm doing photo studies, and sometimes I don't. I think there's value to both. I think eyeballing it is good because you kind of learn how to approach those colors on your own without any help, and like that is very helpful. But also I find digitally specifically doing color studies where you eyedrop a color and then see what that color actually is out of context, and then adding it to your piece and then seeing how the colors interact with each other, that is really valuable. So yeah, depends on the piece and the day, but for this one I was color picking, and so I kind of worked from the outside in a little bit. I find like eyebrows are a good anchor point for a portrait just because, they're connected to the eyes and it kind of helps proportionally with everything else. So kind of worked from the eyebrows, and like especially with this piece I really wanted to get the colors right, and so I wanted those sides to feel correct. So you'll start to see me add the blue and the red and kind of just build it up. The colors aren't like right off the gate, but just putting stuff down and then fixing it is a lot easier than trying to get it right on the first try, in my experience at least. That's just kind of how I work. So you'll see I kind of push things around and get a little funky with it, and this piece has a long ugly face. There are some pieces that don't, but for this one I was really just kind of fighting through it and trying to get it right, especially because I just think Bill Hader has such a specific face, so he's a little hard to draw. But by God, I'm trying. By God, I've been trying to draw his face, just because I think he has an interesting face. That's the polite way I can talk about him on the internet. Anyway, not a question, but I wanted to say that we have so many similar interests and I love your art. Thank you so much. Next question. What shows other than Succession and Barry have you seen and really enjoyed? So, despite what people may think, I do watch more than 2 shows. It was just, they ended at the same time, right? So, like, this past Suck Barry, March, April, May, early June, like, it was just such a moment. So, that was just really on my mind. But, I love Severance. That's a show on Apple TV Plus or anywhere if you pirate things. Not saying that I do. I pro never. But it's so good. It's a like psychological-ish, sci-fi, thriller-ish story about this company that makes people go through a procedure where basically as soon as they enter their workplace, they become a new version of themselves. So they have no memory or knowledge of who they are on the outside and who like how the world works, and then their outside selves don't know what they actually do at work. They only have the company to go off of. So like it has such like interesting questions about like just like what that even means, and it starts to explore it in some really interesting ways. And then it's also a great like pro union, anti work Marxist like commentary. It's like awesome. They end up like kind of standing up for themselves, and then there's also like the mystery angle of like trying to figure out what's going on there. And also there's like a great tender love story between John Turturro and Christopher Walken, and like that's not even like the most important part of it. Like there's so much good stuff, and also there's like a great gay relationship. So yeah, I love Severance. Twin Peaks, as I was kind of talking about before, very important to me. The middle of season 2 sucks and the return is weird, but yeah, it's very influential. I think it's worth watching at least once, just because you can, if you like really want to get into TV and film and stuff, because you can feel and see how much it has influenced things that have come out since then. And like there are some parts and aspects that are really like really revolutionary for coming out in 1990, 1991. So yeah, Twin Peaks, love. NBC's Hannibal is fantastic. Obviously, if you don't like gore, you shouldn't watch it. But yeah, it's such an amazing take on the story of like Hannibal Lecter, especially because it really is supposed to only be about like the Great Red Dragon book, but it just like takes this whole like it's such a great story. I wish I could watch it again for the first time. There's just so much great stuff about it, and the acting in it. Don't really like the showrunner, but that's neither here nor there. What else have I seen? I mean, Mob Psycho 100 is the best anime of all time. You can comment that you disagree with that, and I don't care. That's just how I feel in my heart. It's the one that I tell people, like, I don't care if you don't watch anime, you're gonna watch this one. Like, you want to watch this one. Like, it's fantastic. And also, I'm gonna say Clone High. Not really the like, not the new one per se, but the original Clone High is so funny. Oh, and also, I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. I just recently watched all of that, and it's hilarious. Like, every episode has at least one skit that is, like, cry laughing. It's funny. Like, just really so good. It's a very specific type of humor, but if you like the humor, then it really hits. Yeah. Looking at the piece again, you can see, like, you know, it starts off not really looking like much, and you just kind of have to keep going and keep adding. I tend to bounce around when I'm working on anything, but, like, especially portraits. Like, I tend to kind of add little bits here and there, especially with painting. I think, like, if I'm inking something and then I am coloring it, I'm not really bouncing around as much. But with painting, I just kind of like, I hop and skip and do whatever. I just kind of bounce around. So yeah, I tend to do like little patches of color. And then when you kind of zoom out, it looks more blended. If you could be a minor/background character in a movie or show, what piece of media would you pick? I was thinking long and hard about this question. It's a really good one. I would either want to be a resident in Twin Peaks, just because, like, I'm already there spiritually. Like, I could be the log lady's best friend. I have the flannels for it. Like, I can be weird enough for it. Or I would want to be one of the dead bodies on Hannibal. I'd want them to do something fun with me. Like, I want something, like, you know, I don't even need to be there. They can, like, cast a mold of me and, like, then do whatever. But yeah, just like, they can have fun with it. Have fun with me, you know? Like, if I'm going to be a minor character, like, that's kind of the vibe I'm going for. What's a show you don't like? First of all, I just want to say sorry if you're hearing any little background things happening. I do live in a city in an apartment, so it's not in my control, okay? But shows I don't like. So I'm not going to talk about ones I haven't seen because of my irrational hater syndrome. There are several I would get, blasted if I mentioned the ones specifically. So we're not going to talk about those. Only going to talk about ones I've actually seen. One that I've specifically seen, White Lotus, honestly kind of mid. Like, here's the thing. The production is really great. Like, the theme song, like, all the music's amazing. And there's a lot of really beautiful, interesting shots. But the actual story, I just, like, don't care. I remember when I watched the first season, like, they really kind of use the whole thing, like, at least in the 2 seasons that are out, that's like, oh, there's a dead body, but you don't know who it is, so you're gonna watch the whole thing just to find out who died. And I don't know. I think it really uses that to get you to care about the characters going into it and like kind of do like a mystery thing where it's like, oh, who's gonna win? Like, who's gonna die? Who's gonna win? But the actual like plot lines just aren't very interesting to me. And I don't know, it feels like there should be more going on than there actually is, which is weird because like there's a lot going on. Like there's a lot of like interpersonal stuff and like all their little arcs, but I don't know, it just didn't resonate for me, and I just like wasn't seeing the appeal. And like I love Jennifer Coolidge, and I'm really glad that she's able to be in like a drama thing. Like that's really cool, but I wasn't like super blown away by her performance. I love her, nothing personal. But yeah, I just like wasn't into it. I watched it all, but I wasn't very into it. Like there were individual performances that I really liked. Like I think Aubrey Plaza was really great in season 2, and the name of the guy escapes me, but the person who plays Armand in the first season, he was also great. Loved his love a train wreck gay man. But yeah, just like didn't hit for me when, normally things that like of that ilk, like, the succession-y, like interpersonal relationship-y stuff does hit for me, and that just like didn't. I also tried watching Euphoria and I just like couldn't get into it. But again, I didn't really like watch much of that, so I've only watched people talk about it. I haven't watched it myself, but yeah. Anyway, favorite NoHo Hank outfit. So if you're unfamiliar, NoHo Hank is the best character on television, from Barry, which, the Barry that I'm drawing, that Barry. That's so hard. I want to say right now, gut reaction, it's a tie between the one that he wore in season 4, episode 1 with the hat and the chain. I drew that one. Or in season 2, there's an outfit where like it's when he and Barry are like training some of the Chechens, and so he has like this little hat on and he has like sunscreen on his face. That one's also really cute, but hard to pick, having to like pick a favorite child. It's just so hard. Next question. This is a long one, so buckle up. Hello. One of my favorite things about your work has always been your super interesting colors. Some of my faves are your recent Barry painting. That's the one we're watching right now. The Haley Williams This Is Why portrait, the Succession Umbrellas drawing, and of course the Saints for Girls portraits. I'm wondering what your thought process is when approaching color relationships, and if that process is different between doing a study and doing something from imagination. How do you go about deciding where to put a fun color that might not have been present in a reference, and determining the right value/saturation to look great with the existing colors in your piece? I know this is such a broad question, but gamut and value/saturation choices are some of the things I personally struggle with the most in my art, and you're a huge inspiration. Hope you're doing good. First of all, thank you for the thoughtful question. I am doing good. And so to answer the first part of that question, it definitely differs between doing a study and doing something from imagination. When I'm specifically sitting down to do a study, I tried like a color study, I try to stick to the reference that I'm looking at, or at the very least stick to the vibe of the picture and try to make the color relationship come across the same way that it does in the reference. And so I tend to stick more to the colors that are in the piece. Like with this one specifically, I am literally just color picking from the photo and trying to put the colors in the right way so that it reads in a similar way. And when I'm doing stuff from imagination, it's kind of like no rules barred. Like I will do whatever. And I think in terms of going about deciding where to put fun colors, I think generally I try to, there is still a little bit of logic. So let's say I'm doing a portrait and I decide I don't want to do like a normal skin tone. The person's going to be green. And so even in that, there are still like color relationships that are probably still the same from like a quote unquote normal portrait to that. So if I'm adding blush, I'm going to choose a color that's a little bit warmer than the base color. And if I'm adding eye bags, the under eye is going to be a little more purple leaning than the base color. And with light and shadow, I usually try to think, if you look in real life, the color that the light is, the opposite will be the shadow color. So if it's natural light and it's kind of like a white gold, then the shadows are going to be like a not super saturated purpley blue. But if you're doing something more dramatic, like even in this berry painting, like you can see there's reflections of the blue on the red side, because like the red is so orange that it kind of just ends up casting that. And also there's a little bit of like reflected light from the blue side going on to like the red shadow side. And so just kind of taking the relationships that are there or that I'm thinking about and amplifying them. So like with the Saints for Girls portraits, I remember specifically I wanted the lighting to feel a little like weird. And so I chose a green light, and then the shadows ended up being pinky purple-ish. And so you can kind of see that if you look in it, you can kind of see where the green parts are and then where more like purpley parts are. And a lot of it is just like experimentation. So starting with like a normalish base and then deciding, I'm going to add a pop of color. And so, it can be a color that's already there. I tend to use color to add focus to things that I want people to look at. So if I really want like the eyes to pop out, I'll make them a color that's not what they actually are in real life. Or if I really want like something in the foreground to appear more like to really grab your eye versus something in the background, I'll use a more intense color for that thing in the foreground. And I think, color is interesting because it's all relative. So there's no true color for anything, and that's frustrating and awesome at the same time. So I think with color stuff, another good thing to kind of keep in mind is value and actually getting the values right before you even think about color. Something that can help is if you turn your image, like while you're working on it, black and white. You can even add like a color layer that's black and it'll just turn it black and white. You can turn it on and off and you can see what the values are looking like. And if everything's kind of the same neutrally mid gray, then you kind of have some contrast issues. And so, there are some times where you can use that strategically. Like if you really want everything to kind of like flow together value-wise, then you can use color to add contrast. But if everything's kind of normal color-wise and everything's close together, then you need value to actually add contrast. So yeah, you can kind of choose, like, do I want the colors to be the things that are, like, differentiating everything, or do I want the value to be really strong and kind of differentiate everything? And yeah, I think that kind of, I think that's a good starting way to answer that question. Like I've been kind of saying, though, you kind of just have to try stuff, and sometimes the colors aren't gonna look great. If you're doing digital art, a great thing is that you can just kind of edit the colors whenever and, like, add adjustment layers and flatten it down and just really sort of really experiment without worrying too much about how the colors are looking. Also, you can add, like, a base layer of a color. So instead of working from white, working from a color, that really helps. Because then you can either choose to go, you can add colors that are harmonious with the underpainting you did, or you can choose colors that really contrast with it. And, you know, depending on what you want, works out great. Hope that helps. Any tips for shadows / blending / rendering while still having texture / not airbrushed looking? Yes. So I think something that is really important to keep in mind when you're starting to do digital painting is edge. So choosing what has a hard edge and what has a soft edge really makes or breaks your piece. I think starting out generally smooth and then adding more detail and more contrast with harder edges is generally a good outlook. I think also the brushes you're using can kind of help. I don't think you necessarily need, like, textured brushes, but if you are really struggling with having it not look airbrushed, not using an airbrush would be good. Also, staying away from, like, smudge tools, blur tools, any of those sorts of little things that are, like, quote-unquote supposed to help you blend. I find things can get muddy really quickly that way. I find it a lot more useful and good, not a good word to describe it, a lot more effective to use brushes that have pressure opacity, so you can kind of get softer or more defined edges depending on how hard you're pressing, and doing the blending that way, like blending between two colors, using the eyedropper, picking that middle, going in again, that helps. And then also just thinking about how the shapes, like breaking your thing that you're rendering into shapes based on, like, light, medium, dark, and paying attention to those edges really helps. You can kind of do, like, photo studies where you're just doing that and just trying to block it out. You can even make it more simple, like try to block everything into either black or white and just look at the edges and see what you need in order for it to still read as that original image without having any blending. And doing stuff like that and understanding how those shapes are functioning helps when you're rendering, because you'll kind of know what shapes need to still be there and which ones don't necessarily need to be there. I hope that helps. Fave brushes. So I do have a video about some Clip Studio brushes that I really like. I need to make another one, to be honest, because it's been a while and my catalog of brushes has changed. For this piece, I basically used two. They both came, so I saw them on Twitter. An artist on Twitter had, like, uploaded a Google Drive folder of their favorite brushes, and two of them are, like, my absolute favorites. There's one called Mameo. I don't really know how to say it, but it's like a pencil brush. It has, like, a subtle texture. I really like that brush. That's the one that I basically used. So I used 4 brushes, actually. I used a pencil brush to do the sketch. I like it. It's, like, fine. It's not my favorite pencil brush, but it's good. And then I used, like, a marker brush on top like while I was still on the sketch layer to add in that base gray. And I did that because that marker brush kind of smudges the way that a marker would if you're like, if you drew with pencil and then you went on top of it. I kind of like that sort of smudgy, like analog thing. So I use that. And then there's a brush called the Speed Paintbrush that is so great for just flatting in colors. If you've ever used Paint Tool Sai, it's like the marker brush in that, which is like one of the greatest digital art brushes of all time. So few brushes have been able to capture that same feeling that Paint Tool Sai marker brush has, and this one comes pretty close. And then I use the Mameo brush on top. I'll try to link them if I remember to. I'll try my darndest. But yeah, I really like those brushes. And I always like to plug True Grit Texture Supply. They make great stuff. If you want your digital art to look more analog, great place to check out. They have a free brush pack if you sign up for their mailing list. I also have a brush pack for Procreate. I know I'm not using it in this video, but I will probably make a video where I'm using it at some point. But yeah, that's on my itch.io. A lot of good brushes in there. I'm proud of the brushes that I made for that pack. Favorite media for art. So it depends. I kind of go through phases where I really want to use one thing and then I fall out of love with it and I turn to something else. Digital art has been the most consistent throughout my art career or whatever, my art lifetime. I've consistently enjoyed doing digital art for like 11 years now or something. So yeah, digital might be my favorite, but also I do really love paint. I love acrylic paint. I love oil paint, but I just don't have like the space for it. I've also been getting back into watercolor because my current sketchbook can handle it, which is nice. Yeah, I forgot how much fun it can be to just like throw down some watercolor, but I guess I kind of only like it right now in like a sketching context. I'm not really interested in making full pieces with watercolor. But yeah, those are my favorite. And also, nothing wrong with like a good fountain pen or a good pencil and just like drawing with that. What advice would you give to people who are starting out? Also, favorite movie? Advice for people who are starting out: have fun. Genuinely, like, hold on to whatever made you want to draw in the first place and try not to get too bogged down with getting good per se. Just try to have fun making art, and the more you draw because you're having fun, the more you'll kind of naturally just start to try and get better. Obviously you can do studies and that sort of thing, and it is helpful, but I think if you are just so focused on getting good, then you probably will stop. Like, for me at least, I would have stopped if I had tried to just like focus on getting good in like a traditional classical sense. I started taking art seriously because I wanted to draw anime girls, and so that's what was keeping me going. And throughout the years, like, just the different things I've been into, like the musicians and the shows that I've liked, like, those are why I continue to make art. And so holding on to those while also like doing this sort of fundamental stuff, I think is really important. Favorite movie, like I talked about before, it's like picking a favorite child. I just don't think I can do it, but if you go on my letterbox, you can see the ones that I've rated well. If you go to college, how did you deal with the transition from high school to college? So I am out of college now, went to art school. Like I think I mentioned in this video, I don't know, I'm recording 2 voiceovers back to back. I've been thinking about going back to school for film, but I don't know when that will happen. Anyway, your question, transition from high school to college. I can't speak to how your high school experience was, but for me, I was so excited to be done with that place. Toward the end especially, I just like was not having a good time. And so I was just really excited to get out of there. And so the transition was mainly just like having something to look forward to. Like I was excited to be going to a place where everybody did art because that's just not the high school that I went to. And I had a summer job where I was working at a library, and that library is amazing. I love them. And that also kind of helped just giving me a little bit of structure before school. And yeah, just try to, enjoy your summer as much as you can. I know obviously not everybody's able to just like have a 3 month long vacation and you need to work or whatever, but try to just enjoy a little bit of like life without having to worry about school. Maybe talk to people, try to like find people online who are going to your college and make some like initial friendships. Talk to your roommate if you are going through that sort of housing. I will just say you're probably not going to be like best friends with your freshman roommate, and that's totally fine. There are some times where it happens, two of my good friends were roommates in freshman year and they're still good friends now. So they're kind of the exception to the rule, but always good to be cordial, see what's up. And yeah, just try to enjoy it. Have something to look forward to. I think, I am coming from a place of someone who had a good college experience, so keep that in mind. But, generally, like, you're on to bigger and better things. So, try not to worry about, like, stuff from high school continuing into college. Kind of happens freshman year, I guess. There's some, like, growing pains of, like, people being weird, but, like, it should be good. I'm rooting for you. You got this. Who are your favorite characters or people to draw? So, characters, definitely Kendall Roy, Succession. I love his face. Like, I just think Jeremy Strong has such an interesting face. Orville Peck, of course, one of my favorite people to draw. I do really like drawing Gerard Way. Mainly they're like the poses and the outfits they draw. Sometimes, I mean, they have a beautiful face, don't get me wrong, but I just really like the energy they have, so that's kind of why I like drawing Gerard. I do really like drawing Will Graham, Hugh Dancy's Will Graham. I find that Will Graham's hard to draw, but when I do get it right, it's very satisfying. And what other characters? I mean, my own characters. The next question's about them, so I'll talk about them more then. But I also do really like drawing Mob from Mob Psycho, and Snoopy. So fun to draw still. I started out trying to draw Snoopy, and I still be trying to draw him. And yeah, I think that answers that one enough. Hey, question for the video. Who are your original characters? We know Saints for Girls, but I see some folks named Aster and Lila, and maybe some others mentioned around and in your sketchbook too, so I wanted to ask more about them, and are they related to any of your thesis pieces like Signals? Speaking of your thesis pieces, just if you have anything more to share about those in general, that'd be awesome. So, in terms of my characters, I do have Saints for Girls, which that is another question that I was asked, so I'll talk about them more later, but they're their own thing. And then Aster and Lila are two characters in a story called My Muse's Muse, which is like a gothic romance about a horror-obsessed artist and a vampire artist who end up in the same residency together. There's some stuff about dreams and like nightmares and stuff. And yeah, so that's them. I don't want to give away too much, but that's them. And then I do have some other characters, like August and Lucky are from a story that's been kind of abandoned and like picked up again and like really sort of tweaked. I can't really speak to their story too much just because I don't know exactly what it looks like, but their story is kind of about like psychic powers and just like psychic powers. That's all I can say right now. There's more to it than that, but yeah. And then I do also have, there's a character named Nemo, aka the Texorcist. They are a technology exorcist. That one I've been keeping close to the chest. I haven't talked about them a lot, but I really love them, and they're gonna slay whenever I actually make like a story about them. And then there's also Jean, who is the main character of my comic Signals. And for my other thesis pieces, I don't have a lot more to share about them than the stuff I've already shared. Again, with the links, I'll try to link my Tumblr down below where you can kind of see all the pieces and the captions for them. I think the next one I want to tackle is how to perform a divine autopsy. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but that one's just kind of thinking about, like, what if a god died and you had to kind of reckon with, like, what that even means? How do you treat the body? Just like, yeah, it's going to be kind of weird and, like, existential, but I'm excited about it in whatever form it ends up taking. And then, yeah, I think that's kind of all I have to say right now. I haven't really been focusing on my thesis pieces. I've just had other stuff I've been more interested in, like Saints for Girls. My question is, tell me more about Saints for Girls. Hearts you back. And then someone else also asked, what bands and or artists would you say have had the biggest influence on Saints for Girls in terms of aesthetics, music style, character designs, etc.? So, for the uninitiated, Saints for Girls is a little fake band that I made. It's a 5-piece band. Ree is the lead singer, Vincent is the bassist, Cassidy and Jas are the 2 guitarists, and Frankie is the drummer. They are a emo-ish band from a not specific time period, generally in the 21st century, but I don't want to be more specific than that. You know, it's kind of ambiguous. In terms of like aesthetics and music style, I think obviously like 2000s emo has been a big influence, but also some like hyperpop influence in there. They're basically like an extension of me. So anything that's inspired me has inspired them. I did start working on them again after seeing My Chemical Romance, and so I think it's important to say that, yeah, they were a big influence, but they're not the only ones. I also think just generally, like, horror is a big inspiration for them, like the Sam Raimi, Evil Dead type, like Jennifer's Body, Ginger Snaps, like those sorts of horror movies are definitely a big visual inspiration. Also always inspired by Gorillaz and Jimi Hendrix, I believe. Oh gosh, I hope that's his last name. The Gorillaz guy. That whole project is obviously a big inspiration, and so inspired by them. And also, there was a band back in the day. There was a band called Cobra Starship, and they released this online little series called CobraCam.tv, and it was just like a weekly skit thing they did. It's very SNL digital shorts to me, but they would just like make little videos, and like some of them were like them on tour, and some of them were like actual like little comedy things they put together, and that's definitely an inspiration for the Saints for Girls and the type of thing I want to make for them. I have also written lyrics and stuff. I'm gonna make I've been saying it, I'm gonna make something with them, but I just don't know like what. I want it to be good, and so I think that's kind of stopping me from actually working actively on it. But yeah, I'll probably make like a NeoCities like website for them as well. Just like I need a place to dump lore, and I need to just like make more lore for them. Like I don't know how to talk about it in like a succinct way. I just like talking about them like everybody knows they exist and they're like a real band. I'll link their Tumblr down below. That has everything I've made for Saints for Girls so far. There's like, if you look at the official Saints for Girls playlist and also the character playlists that I've made, those are the main musical inspirations. I think they kind of sound like a mix of all of the things in there. There's a lot of different things in there, and so yeah. Well, here we are at the end. I'll talk a bit about like the end of the painting because like right now I can just tell the voiceover is going to be longer than the video, so I'm going to have to tweak the timing a little bit. But as you saw, as you were watching, I continued. I start like with bigger sort of color moves, and then I make sure that the relationships between those moves look right, and then I kind of zoom out again and I assess. And for this, I noticed that the red and blue highlights, like the lightest parts, weren't light enough, so I went back, added those. I'm really proud of how the hair ended up. I ended up just like completely blacking out the background and then just adding in the highlights for the hair just to give it the impression, and I think it was successful. And I'm not gonna lie, I mainly just cared about the like head and neck. I definitely kind of gave up a little bit on the clothing. I mean, it's fine. I think it still works, but I will just be upfront and say it was not what I was like focusing on. And then you saw I tried to like add a little background thing. I was thinking because like the specific beach is there's a like water symbolism thing happening in Barry, like both the show and specifically for that character. I don't want to say what it is in case you haven't watched it yet, because I just think going in blind to that show is like the best way to watch it. But thought about adding some sort of like water reflection, but then I was like, no, I'm just gonna leave it. And then you can see me kind of futz around with some texture on top. I ended up just putting it into one of the paper paper textures from True Grit Texture Supply. I ended up just putting it in that instead of trying to add texture another way, just because I really wanted it to be subtle. Like sometimes when I add texture, I really just kind of go ham, and that's fun, but that's not what I wanted for this piece. Yeah, I think we're done. Thank you so much if you stuck around this long. I think my voice is kind of dying from recording 2 voiceovers back to back, but it is what it is. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, and subscribe. Shout out to all my patrons. If you want to become a patron, my Patreon's in the description. You get videos and art early. You can find me everywhere at Cryptozoology, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye.